There's 3 of them.
It's the third.
Yeah, there's stories in this one.
Oh, that's cool. And these are just one. Are you involved in these?
Well, our partner was co-author of the first 2, and I wrote the section on turquoise gemology
Oh, cool.
in the second book, and then this is just one we had with us, the third one that has our story and
Okay, cool.
some other artists. But
So we're starting with Richard and Helen Shull here, and they were just showing me this book called Turquoise in America, which, Richard, you wrote a chapter, it looks like.
Well, we're included in the book.
That's
but
our story.
In the second, this is the third book.
I
In
see.
the second book, I wrote.
Did you write it, or did actually Helen write it, and then you just took the...
we wrote together.
We worked together on it.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny how that works?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been trying to get my wife to do a book with me, and she's like, she doesn't want to. I said, I'll make you first author if you want. I go, oh, okay. She knows she has to do all the work.
Right.
That's a lot of work.
Make me look good.
Yeah.
So you guys walked into my gallery yesterday, and we started talking, and it was like, you own mines. 40 of them, right?
Well, 40 claims.
Yeah, 40
So some
claims.
of those claims might be considered one mine, like our Ajax mine.
Okay.
It's 4 claims, but all
Mhm.
considered.
So tell
One
me the
mine,
difference
so.
between a claim and a mine.
Okay. A claim is a 20-acre, a load claim basically is a 20-acre parcel.
What do you mean when you say low?
Well, load.
Load.
Oh, low.
So
Okay.
versus a placer mine, which like gold nuggets
Mhm.
are loose in the soil, that'd be a placer mine. If
Mhm.
you're going into hard rock, it's called a load mine.
Mm.
So a 20-acre load claim is basically 600 by 1,500 feet.
Mm.
Uh,
So not
But-
that big.
it's 20 acres, but what a lot of people don't get when they're out in the field and there's a lot of hills
Right.
is it's 20 acres as a crow flies. And you could walk for a half mile up and down over hills
Right. So it could
to
take-
make that quarter mile
Right.
distance or 1,500 foot distance.
Okay.
So it ends up being a pretty good surface area.
A lot of hiking. Yeah, both of you are nice and thin. So,
We do a lot of hiking.
so you have 40 claims, correct?
That's right.
And then on one claim, there could be multiple mines?
There could be multiple holes,
I see.
basically. Generally, one claim it could be considered a mine or a group of claims.
I see.
And sometimes if it's on one side of the mountain versus the other, and historically maybe there was a known mine on this side and we found something on the other side,
Right.
we generally call it the same name, especially if it's a historical name.
I see.
But it's same mountain, same deposit.
And
type of thing.
Helen,
So-
are you the person who's finding all these turquoise
Sometimes.
deposits? Yeah, okay. Let's hear it.
Sometimes.
So what's involved in finding a turquoise mine or deposit? I mean, it's not just, I'm going to go out with a stick. I mean, you're doing some geology, right?
Geology and historical research, and sometimes just keeping our eyes open. I started out in botany, so I
Nice.
was
My mom was a botanist.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Yes, always looking at the details of the ground. So
Can you look, are there certain plants you go, okay, this is perfect for this type of situation for turquoise to be found?
chemistry wise, I'm not real sure. There's certain types of rock that
Right.
maybe the vegetation's a little different over there, and
Yeah.
might want to go look over there.
So,
kind of
because
thing.
turquoise is like a copper, they have a copper porphyria that it's deep in the ground, right? And water comes down like snow and rain and things and adds with heat, right? 200 to 300 Fahrenheit when it's made originally.
It kind of depends. I mean, some of it, they say it's formed by meteoric waters, meaning
Right.
falls from the sky.
Right.
And we've found in some cases, and more current research is showing that sometimes it's circulating groundwater.
Mm.
So it may be a hydrothermal spring or something that comes up,
Mm-hmm.
and then as cycles happen, it dries back out. It gets enriched by water again.
Mhm.
So that can be
Oh, I
one
see,
type
right,
as
right.
well. I mean, basically, it just needs water.
Right. And the
To-
water gives O2. It oxidizes with the sulfates and the copper, right?
Right.
That goes out. And then you have an acidic copper solution that mixes with like aluminum and potassium
Phosphorus.
and
Yeah.
phosphorus.
Right.
Right.
So
Okay.
tighter aluminum.
And the
phosphorus.
phosphorus is often found in the host material, the host
It can
rock.
be from the rock, the geology of the rock.
Yeah.
Like the mineral apatite is a phosphate mineral.
Right.
But it also can be from life forms. that have dissolved, whether it's an old sea life form,
Oh, interesting.
bone, different things can cause it. So
Yeah, it makes sense. It has phosphorus in it, right?
Turquoise
We have
doesn't
phosphorus.
care where it gets the ingredients.
Right, but
It's
you
just-
have to have the phosphorus too.
You do.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you look for fossils, right? Fossil remnants, that would say like, shells and different things on surface finds. That would be a positive sign, I would assume.
That could be.
Possibly,
Yeah.
yes.
There are replacements of fossils with
Yeah.
turquoise where the fossil was in the rock
Yeah,
and then it dissolved away and left a cavity,
yeah,
because the turquoise also needs a cavity to form. So
Right.
whether that's a fracture in the ground or a
Right.
hole left from a life form, but it helps that life form was there and also added phosphorus to the geology, because
Yeah.
it's a secondary formation. As long as there's those ingredients and enough acidity
Right.
to dissolve everything and then redeposit it, that's how it will form. So,
And is most turquoise that you're dealing with surface fine, kind of, let's say within 10 feet down?
we've-
Everywhere from the surface down to...
We've gone down 70 feet
70
Wow,
feet,
at
okay.
one point,
yeah.
but most turquoise forms within 100 or 90 feet of the surface,
Mhm.
just by the
Nice.
nature of, because of the water percolating and the oxidation.
Right.
There's exceptions to that.
Like
Oh.
Bisbee and Lone Mountain.
Yeah.
are
Right,
deeper.
yeah, they can go way deep.
Yeah.
I know Bisbee for sure, but I didn't know about Lone Mountain. How
Yeah.
deep can that go?
I think they're down 150 feet,
Oh, yeah.
100 and something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, as I told them, I wore my Lone Mountain Fred Peschel bracelet just for them.
Wonderful
Yeah.
to see.
And I said, "You know what it is?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, it's Lone Mountain." They know. They both know. Which brings us to something I tell people all the time, and it'll be nice to hear miners. I guess I can call you miners, right?
Mhm,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. You don't know what kind of turquoise it is for sure unless you're at that mine pulling it out. Is
Pretty
that
much-
a true
pretty
statement?
much.
Pretty much. Yeah. I mean, we look at this and we go, we know it's probably
There
Lone
are
Mountain.
certain distinctive things.
Right.
But
Right. And
overall,
like you mentioned the artist, so that
yes.
when people are trying to figure out and trying to sleuth out a piece,
Right.
Mhm.
if a certain artist used primarily that stone, that's going
Right.
to be a good guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Fred Peschel did use Lone Mountain because he could get to it because it was in L.A. The
Right.
guy who sold it was really close to where he was.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the takeaway, folks, today. If you
And then a paper trail too, to
Yes.
prove the provenance. So somebody
Yeah.
might have a good paper trail relations up with the miner
Mhm.
or a reputable dealer who worked with certain mines.
right,
And so that's usually
Yeah.
pretty acceptable provenance,
Mhm.
even if you didn't see it coming out of the ground yourself. And there's also certain miners that maybe make up where it came from too, just because they want to get more money.
yeah, I can see
And
that.
so, it is
Is
business.
that the
so
old salt the mine kind of thing?
kind of,
goodness.
yeah, along that line. Or,
We've seen things
to
out
say
there,
this
but
looks like such and such, but you're getting more money for that mine than
Right.
a different mine. They might make something up, but that's business.
And you have very specific, and we'll get into it, but just since we're on this part, you have very specific mines that have certain values. Is there any way for you to provide a certificate of authenticity with the pieces, or do you number them, or do any of that kind of stuff?
we send a certificate with every stone.
Uh-huh.
So it has our information, the information about the stone.
And I was going to say, and how do you keep that? No, that certificate goes with that stone.
It has the carat weight of the stone.
I see.
So that can tie it to it.
Yeah.
That it's, I've always thought about, how do you mark a stone or something?
Right.
So it has the mine name, and there are ways. Right now we're doing the certificates and putting the carat
Yeah.
weight, and talking about on the certificate also whether it's been treated, backed,
Right.
natural, all the different.
And backing's fine, right? I mean,
Oh,
it
yeah,
helps
yeah.
stabilize the stone, right?
It does. It's just nice to have all that information.
Yes.
So.
Yeah.
I mean, I wonder if you could do like a spectrophotometry of each. I mean, it may not be worth it, but each stone, so it has its exact what it is. I mean, I could see it if it's worth enough.
There's a lot of studies going on trying to figure out some of that.
Right.
Well, and some we've done with a photo. If it's a really
Oh,
high-end
yes.
stone,
We sent
there
a
will be
photo with
a
it,
photo
too.
with a certificate.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, you could also do blockchain with this stuff too, where it gets into the blockchain, so each individual stone is listed.
Right.
So
Oh,
which
yeah.
would be, and so anybody who sells it goes in the blockchain. The next person has to be part of that blockchain, so you know exactly the provenance. I could
Right.
see that for things that get valuable enough, and it sounds like you have at least one mine that is that valuable. In fact, we'll just talk about it now since
Yeah.
we're right
Okay.
here. Go ahead, whoever wants to talk about what you said was the most valuable turquoise
Well,
on planet Earth.
Our black web gem mine has only produced about 2.5 pounds of
Yeah.
high grade material.
Yeah.
So
But
we were talking about yesterday, like Lander Blue is around
High-grade
close to
blue.
100 pounds or so.
Right.
And we were like, oh, I wish we could ever find 100 pounds of this
I
material.
know,
Yeah.
that would be wonderful.
And it's high end. It doesn't sell as much as Lander because Lander has the name, but
Right.
it has the qualities of Lander, high end Black Web, number 8. Something
And it
like
looks
that.
very similar to it.
It is in the high grades. They look very similar to
Oh,
both
that's
those
Beautiful.
ones.
and how
That's
far
right.
is it from Lander? Because you're up in Nevada.
It's actually in Esmeralda County.
Yeah.
So it's
about
close.
how far
It's
is it?
closer to Lone Mountain. It's a couple hundred miles from
Okay.
Lander. So,
Mhm.
but within maybe 30 miles of Lone Mountain.
Right.
So has those characteristics of that type of geology.
Right.
And we found that there's an area in Lander County and Esmeralda County that have identical geology. Basically, they're named different formations because different geologists discovered them or described them. But it's a calcareous shale formation with chert, which you often see the black chert inclusions
Right.
in turquoise.
Right.
And so those two types of geology produce very similar types of turquoise.
So you were looking for those kind of geologic kind of markers, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
and definitely you can tell by ground color for one thing, but just even looking at geologic maps, that's how we found some things.
And so how did you find this one? If you want
This
to share.
one was in conjunction with our partner Philip Chambliss. He had been researching a lost mine for years and years and hadn't been able to find it on the ground. And we went out hiking in the area trying to find where this 100-year-old mine had
Right.
been mined, then lost to a flash flood. And so we were out hiking and found this little depression. And I kind of looked around and I saw
There's a little blue
something
sticking out of
bubbly
the
sticking out of the
wall.
wall. It had one blue speck, but it was a black. It looked black, but
Right.
it looked like a turquoise nugget, but black.
Right.
And I went and told Helen and Philip, I'm like, this is high dollar stuff. This is
Right.
this is what we're looking for. And I go, this could sell for $100 a carat wholesale. And they thought, what are you talking
Right.
about? And
Right.
a year later, we're at India Market, and people are like, oh my god, I haven't seen like this
There
kind
it
of
is.
stuff come out of the ground in 40 years.
So when you have that, so you don't own that land yet, right?
No, it's Bureau of Land Management.
So you go first order is okay, go to BIA and say we want to do a load mine.
Well,
BLM
through BLM.
and the
BLM,
county.
yeah.
And so,
And how
You do-
long does that process take?
well, you have 90 days to file
Yeah.
from when you locate it. So you put paper on the ground to locate the claim and photograph it, date it,
Right.
make sure, because people will go in and see that you've done that. And before you filed your paperwork with BLM, someone might go in and say, put a date on it that they found it almost 3 months before and
The things
cheat
we
you
have
out
to
of
deal
it.
with.
And so people tend to keep it quiet. You put it on the ground, but don't talk about it until the 90 days is
I'm sure.
gone through. So,
And you just leave everything inside too. You don't do anything.
yeah, we put up a post
Yeah.
and
And you're out in the middle of the boonies anyway, right?
right. But people watch us too.
I
they
bet.
see where we're going.
I'm sure.
But so then you file with BLM and the
Have
county.
you had anybody hijack a claim like that?
Oh,
Mhm.
more than a few times.
It's
And
happened.
there's no recourse when that happens?
You could take them to court, but trying to prove the
Yeah.
dating situation. I mean, if they didn't photograph, that's one reason we take a photograph of the paper
Yes.
on the ground with landmarks.
Yes.
So that way we prove that date.
Yeah.
And they could fake it. They could change a date stamp on the camera or something and take a picture
Yeah.
trying to prove it. When it's happened to us a couple times, we've just let it go because court costs, and we knew who the people were. So
And they have to have a stake or something, right?
yeah.
So you could even film as you're doing this, right? When you're out.
Mhm.
I mean, you could put a GoPro on your head and just as you start looking, right?
Mhm.
That's
And document
Yeah.
everything. Like
Yeah.
literally we're walking, what do you think? Just the whole conversation. I mean, I don't know if it's worth it, but
The one time we had put our stakes out, and we came back the next time, and there were other stakes right next to ours. Like,
but when you make a claim, you get this sizable area that you can mine.
yeah, with the 20 acres and
Right.
and you can do as many claims as you want as long as
Is
someone
it
else doesn't
expensive
have
to make a
claim.
claim like that?
It's a few $100s.
Yeah, so not really.
But for the
that's
initial.
just the start.
But then-
Well, no, I get that part.
Right.
That
but,
part is
but then
the
each
cheap part.
year,
Uh-huh.
if you have over 10 claims, you have to pay a maintenance fee to
Yeah.
BLM. Otherwise, if you have less than 10, you can do a small miners deal.
Yeah.
That's not as expensive, but more paperwork.
I see.
So
Yeah.
also paying the fee kind of proves intent. And one of the biggest things with mining claims is, what is your intent? Your intent
Right.
is to claim this ground.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So any place that a miner can prove intent shows that they're really interested. So if it does go to court,
Right.
you're
Yeah.
proving that you really wanted that.
Yeah.
That
Really,
ground.
I was here first, and this is what I'm going to do. I'm
Right.
going to mine this. It's,
And so when you found this and you made your claim and you waited your 90 days,
Yeah.
then what happens?
Then we can work it
So what
And-
happened in this case?
And-
small scale.
on a small scale.
Yeah.
Picks and shovels?
On this one, because it's a hike, it's
Mhm.
all tools we can carry in.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of ways to work a mine, and the handwork is obviously the most difficult. But if you're in a remote place, that's
That's what you have
what
to
you're
do.
stuck with. And if you're going to
Yeah.
use equipment, you do have to put up a reclamation bond with BLM, which
Yeah.
starts at a few thousand and can be tens of thousands of
So
dollars.
that's if you want to bring in a backhoe kind of thing?
right, and
Yeah.
do disturbance that needs to be fixed
Later.
basically
Yeah.
later.
Got it.
Put
And
up
that
a
way you
bond
put
for
up the money to
reclamation.
ensure that if you take off or something happens and you can't fix it, that they have the money to do that
Mm.
work.
Mhm.
And when you're finding this kind of material, do you find other things like gold or silver or anything like that? Or is it really just, I mean, this is copper area, right? This
Right.
is really what you're
Mhm.
looking for. I don't know.
Turquoise deposits can be associated with the upper
Mhm.
surface of a gold deposit. So a lot of Nevada mines have disseminated gold
Mm.
deeper.
Yeah.
And that's how we've lost a lot of classic mines.
Yeah.
Gold companies come in, buy out the claims. They just crush the ore. The turquoise is gone.
Right. So they want the thing.
Yeah.
And they can, but they have to pay you to get those claims. They can't just,
No, if you own a claim,
right.
and that's happened a number of times where a mining company wants that ground,
Right.
and a lot of times that's where a miner will make a deal, a contract for the turquoise. So,
Mm.
like in Kingman with
Right.
the mine there, it's primarily a metal mine,
Yes.
and then they have a contract to be able to get the turquoise.
Yeah.
So,
And has that happened to you or somebody who's bought you guys out?
one of our partners has
Mhm.
has done something with the Hitchito mines in New Mexico, and
Yeah.
then our Philip Chambliss, and we're looking at one right now where a large company wants to mine the metals potentially. So
And you try to negotiate where you can get the turquoise if possible.
get the turquoise rights, and often it'll be for their entire operation. So if you
Yeah.
know one claim that's in the middle of what they want to do,
Right.
sometimes you can get the rights to the turquoise and basically save it from
Yes.
being destroyed.
Yeah,
and
no, I
crushed.
get it. But I also understand if you have the opportunity to sell something and make a lot of money, it allows you to go look other places for turquoise. It's not like there's not a lot of turquoise around. There are a lot of turquoise mines around, I would think, in the Southwest because we're arid, right? We have all
Right.
the right components for it.
Exactly.
So it's just a matter of spending the time, energy, and money because this is not a get rich scheme kind of a deal, I would think, right? As a general rule.
It's mostly a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
I would think, right?
Yeah.
And a lifestyle. I mean, that's
And,
really
yeah, part of lifestyle.
And that's what we're going to get to because
Yeah.
to me, it seems like anybody who goes in this business, the first thing they love is turquoise.
You
that
have
they're
to love it.
Kind of what I call, they're stone men
Mhm.
or stone woman in this case, that they get off on the turquoise.
It's amazing. It's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
So I'm not off on that. Yeah.
no. I mean, some people go into it for the money.
Yeah,
and
some do.
probably more in the
Mhm.
70s
Yes.
when the prices were up and there was a craze.
And there was
You had people out there with bulldozers on the weekends who didn't care about the turquoise and just
There are levels of care.
saw
Yes.
the money. I mean, and
Mhm.
that still happens to a degree with some people, but you pretty much, I think, to really find it and get it to the right artist and get it out to the right channels, you have to have a passion for the stone.
Yeah, I
It's
would
hard
think
to,
so.
you
Cut
can't
it-
really,
to cut it properly, to just even know what to do with it. You have
Yeah,
to-
exactly. And it's a culture
Care
and a
about it.
community too, right?
It is.
it is.
Yeah. I mean, every person that's in this business, I'm sure, good or
few.
bad. And
Right.
I'm
Quite a
sure
few,
there's,
yes,
I mean,
yes.
it's not, no different than our business, but, and I'm sure there's trading and things that go along too with that and
Mhm.
excitement when somebody finds a new kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
And you get to name it, right? When it's
When
it's a
it's
different, when it comes
something
out.
new.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
how many different kinds of turquoise have you named?
Oh.
Do you know?
There's been a few. Just for example, there's 4 right here. The black web gem we named. Our dire
Say that
blue.
again, black.
Black web gem.
Okay, and is that the one that was?
That's the $100 carat up to, or can be. Or
Yeah,
even
that's
more.
the one that was 2.5.
Just a little bit, yes.
Yeah, there's only about
yes.
2.5 pounds
I
total.
love that.
Yeah.
2.5.
After days, and I mean, we've spent years
Years looking for
sporadically mining
Yeah.
it, just because we can't put all our effort into it because we wouldn't pay the bills. So
that. Yeah.
Right.
we work another mine, make sure the bills are paid, and then go try a little bit more to find more of that.
And just kind of keep going around that area looking and
Exactly.
digging, and
Yeah.
every once in a while something will pop out.
Seems like it.
Yeah.
What's like the biggest nugget that has come out? Not actually, probably most of them aren't nuggets, but they come out in little like rivets of
There's
streams.
Nuggets or
And veins.
veins,
And veins,
depending
Yeah.
on the deposit. Some mines are more nugget mines with
Mhm.
clay seams where there was a fault. We call it shear zone,
Mhm.
and the clay in those will provide that space for the nuggets to
Yeah.
form.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Other places in harder rock, it'll be veins.
Mhm.
It just depends on.
And what's the
on
biggest carat weight that you've got out of that?
Out of black web gem,
Yeah, like
the biggest.
10 carats, 15 carats.
It's generally smaller, but there have been a few larger nuggets that might have
Like
produced a
30?
40 or 50
Wow.
carat stone. Generally, those aren't the best of the black web.
Right.
They're nice blue. There'll be some web to them,
Right.
but not.
It's a smaller little.
Mostly
It seems
tiny
like turquoise
stuff,
in
yeah.
general.
Yeah.
The
Mhm.
thinner veins and the smaller pieces have the most intense color.
Uh-huh.
That's just the nature of turquoise. It starts getting bigger, and for whatever reason, and there are exceptions to that, but that's
Yeah.
just kind of the general.
Yeah.
I find it
Generally.
interesting in America, Southwest especially, we want the matrix stuff, right? We all want matrix. But if you look at Persian stuff, they don't want any flaws, right? They want
Right.
it perfectly blue.
Right.
Mhm.
And that's like the standard,
Yeah.
right? The stuff
And
that
so there's
was
kind of
used
two
in
world
Egypt
standards.
3,000
So-
years ago, right?
Mhm.
Exactly. And the same in the U.S. when mining really started in the 1890s
Yeah.
and early 1900s. The New York companies wanted that blue, and they were
Yeah,
trying
Tiffany.
to find
Yeah.
exactly. And they're trying to find pure blue,
Right.
and they were funding people, not necessarily owning mines in general. I mean, there's exceptions to that too, but they'd fund people to go try to produce this material. They buy the production.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest complaints was, you're not producing enough of what we want.
Yeah.
And the miner would be like, well, we need
It's
to
very
develop the mine.
difficult,
Like, we
yeah.
don't want to pay for development. We
Right.
want to pay for turquoise. Where's
Right.
the turquoise?
Right.
And that's where they quickly found out that trying to specialize in that pure Persian blue color was a difficult corporate model.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's-
That's why I brought in this
Yeah.
little piece. Yeah. That I got from Doug's mine at Cerrillos.
Oh yeah.
It's Cerrillos, and it's blue as blue can be.
Yeah.
It's just a little dot. I found it in the surface
Mm-hmm.
at his mine, and he was kind enough to let us go look and helped on the book I wrote for Stoneman. But you think of Cerrillos as being this green stuff we do, when it's old, but really
Right.
it was just perfectly blue,
The best material there.
and it's small. Yeah.
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 And there's several mines in the Cerrillos Hills too. So there is
Yeah,
Mhm.
some variety.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this black web that you have, where did most of that end up? With jewelers?
It did
Yes,
end up
yes.
with
So
jewelers.
mostly-
Did the word get out?
yeah.
Like, is this like,
It did.
oh
We
my
debuted
God,
it.
Richard and Helen have found?
Well, it's kind of a funny story that one year we were there at India Market at the booth we have at the El Dorado, and where we supply a lot of native artists. And there were two guys there that were really well-known authorities on turquoise and miners. And here's a room full of turquoise, all beautiful turquoise. And they said, but there's no $100 rock in this room, meaning $100 a carat
Right.
wholesale.
Yeah.
Right.
And so the next year, here we are with this tray, and we had the $100 rock that year. But we had people who have been in the industry, old timers, lifetime, and they saw that material and they were blown away. I mean, and then it spread pretty quickly. And we had artists or
And collectors.
traders and collectors,
Yeah.
but traders who supported different artists coming in, and it all went pretty quick.
Yeah.
Mm.
So it was just as soon as people saw there was that grade.
A few jaws dropped and
And so
Yeah,
how
that's it.
many, how much weight by carat or whatever would there have been at that show at Indian Market?
Well,
oh, carat weight.
Or
we
how
cut-
many stones? Are you talking about 100 stones that you had of it?
It was a double tray like this.
Okay, so not that many.
Not that many.
No.
Yeah, less than maybe 40
Mm.
stones.
and a pound of good turquoise may cut 1,000 carats, maybe
Oh,
800,
yeah.
maybe 600. They're bubbly nuggets, so the yield's going to be even lower.
And you're
So-
selling the nuggets versus
We are selling cut stones.
it was already cut.
Yeah,
And did
we-
you cut them?
We did.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do. We do
And
the whole
and
process
those,
all the way
because
through.
of our background of the art of cutting turquoise, we cut those and didn't sell the rough
Yeah.
for a couple reasons. One is the rough was so valuable that when you look at what it would sell for
Right.
cut, and then you translate that the yield and try to sell the rough, and you say, okay, this is $80,000 a pound, people would just be like, you're out of your
Wow.
mind. I pay $500 a pound or
Right.
$2,000 a pound,
Right.
or no, $5.
To the cutter, there's that risk of cutting it open, and is it any good? So
Yes. Right.
Doing that for rough can be a
Yes.
challenge.
Yeah. So, but you take the risk when you cut it
Yeah.
yourself.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
and
And the
we
reward.
know what we're doing with it, so we can.
There's a
make
good chance
nice
we're going to be
stones.
able to
Yeah.
get a good if I look at it and study it, there's a good chance that it's going to be a decent stone.
Mhm.
So this comes from the experience of cutting.
So when you look at it, what are you trying to figure out as far as whether how to cut it? Because you probably know once you have it in your hand, this is something I can cut, right?
Generally,
Not always?
Well, not always.
Yeah.
I mean, some will look great on the outside and be a mud ball in the middle. I
Oh.
mean, it just depends, and that's
Turquoise
always
is
that's
tricky.
heartbreaking. That's one reason why selling certain high end material, people can be really disappointed. It's a gamble,
I see.
and they're like, "Well, you sold me this."
In rough.
It's
yeah.
like, well, you can't see, and no one has
Rough
X-ray
is-
vision, but you study them enough that you get an idea,
Right.
and then a
Yeah.
lot of it's orientation because,
Mm-hmm.
especially with nuggets, it's not really a grain, but if you cut it the wrong direction, instead of getting a nice spider web pattern, you
Mhm.
get more like elliptical,
It just
a pattern that just it looks more like lines
Right.
rather than
The matrix.
the botryoidal,
Got it.
So
Yeah.
there's a lot of little things that go
Uh-huh.
into getting the best stone out of a high grade piece.
So when you got this black matrix stone, how long was it till you cut it? 2 hours? I mean, I would think you would be like running to get it where you could cut it.
I started windowing some
Yeah.
just to
yeah.
see how it orient and
Is this
Tell
going
me
to be
what
what I
that.
think
tell-
it is?
Tell people what that means.
and so windowing is basically grinding an area on part of the stone and polishing it
Just a little on
to
the
kind of
outside
see
to-
what it's
Right.
going to look like polished
Yeah.
before you dive into the whole thing.
Right.
And some people just go in and cut a nugget in half.
Right.
And I see that as kind of not always the best way. I mean,
I mean, it's exciting.
it's
to see
exciting to
what's in
split a
there.
nugget
sure.
and see it, but sometimes you might get 4 stones out of that nugget. So if you cut it just in half to start with, you can waste a lot of material.
Yeah.
So that's why I'll window, and I may not totally polish it, but I'll get it pretty smooth where I can see
Right.
what it's going to look like faced up for a piece of jewelry. So sometimes the desire to just see what it is
I get it.
gets overwhelming,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
then you got to
Huh.
calm down and realize if it's something really good that
Yeah.
you have to have the patience. I mean, it's been there. It could be there been laying there for thousands or millions of years,
Mhm.
Yes.
and then some guy finds it and goes out and ruins it as soon as he sees it. That's
Yeah.
not really the best
Try not
respect
to
for
do
the
that.
stone. So
Yes, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's a whole group of people that are the top cutters and people that really know what they're doing,
Definitely.
like what you're doing.
Definitely.
Right?
Mhm.
Is there pieces ever you go, I need this guy or girl to look at it to cut it versus because you actually want to get that secondary, influence? Are you the guy that they come to?
usually
Yeah.
we're the people that come to
Got it.
just with
Okay,
our
because there's
experience
always somebody, right?
Yeah.
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 Because I've done a lot of other lapidary gem. I'm kind of known for my optical gem carvings, sculptural gem
Oh,
carvings,
nice. Okay.
and the polish that I get on different gem materials. So I've translated that to turquoise as well.
Mm-hmm.
And what I always say about turquoise, it can be the easiest and most difficult stone to cut. And it's really easy just to hack out a piece of turquoise and put a polish on it, and it's fine. I mean,
Mhm.
it'll look okay,
Mhm.
but there's a real art to bringing out the best of that piece, and
I'm
that's
sure.
where the difficulty part comes in.
Yeah.
Because turquoise compared to other stones can be somewhat easy to polish because it's softer than some stones,
Right.
but that's also that leaves
There's different hardnesses.
ways. Yeah, there's so many
there's
variables.
Matrix.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of variables.
I've heard lander is actually hard to work with.
Yes,
Have you
I
worked
wouldn't be
with-
surprised.
I have not.
Yeah, I mean,
Just because there's not really.
I was going to say
it's not
there's
rough.
probably
available,
any
so-
rough left, right?
Right.
I would think.
But looking at it, I could see why with the
Does
different
any-
matrixes.
Yeah, does anybody go and I don't know who owns that mine now, but does anybody try to? See if there's
It's
anything
owned by a
else
guy
there.
named Bob Bruscia, and he has put some effort into trying to find more, but
Nothing.
nothing. So, and
It's
those high grade mines are pockety. And
Yeah,
a lot
it's
of
a hat
times
mine,
they got
right?
one pocket, and
that's it.
that's it.
There may be another in the mountain somewhere.
Yeah.
But
Well, you found one.
how much mountain do you want to?
Right. How long
take-
and how hard is
Yeah.
it to do?
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the beginning. How in the world two people become miners? So I'm going to kind of go back and forth. But Helen, maybe you can tell me kind of where you grew up and what's your backstory.
Let's see. I grew up in Southern California.
Yeah.
And my family did a lot of hiking in the Sierra, and we traveled throughout the Southwest. And whenever we were on foot, my mom always said, "There's a worthy rock. It's worthy of you carrying with you all day. Even if you're tired from hiking, whatever, you need to carry this rock." So I would always look for that worthy rock.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kind of kept looking for them.
Right.
But also then I went into botany and kind of focused on learning the ground and what's there. And it just kind of translated into stone when.
And you got a degree in college in botany?
I did. I got a master's in biology, botany.
And where was that?
That was up at Humboldt State.
In Humboldt State. And at that time, had you bought any turquoise jewelry or anything turquoise at all when you're kind of?
I'd had turquoise jewelry from when I was a little kid from the 70s, traveling around the West, and my mom had some, and I've had a couple of special pieces.
Oh, and your grandparents, because of
my grandparents lived in Albuquerque, so
we
spent time with that. And kind of a funny story of how we got back together. We spent a lot of time in the desert together, and then I went off to school and did my thing. And
so this was before you guys knew each other growing up?
We met in high school, but
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And I had taken a botany class that went to the Mojave Desert, and I had a VW bus and it broke down. And I knew that he liked traveling in the desert. And so I called him and I said, "I need this part. I'm in Baker. Can you come and get me and bring me this part?" And he said, "Oh, yeah, my friends, turquoise miners, live there. Go and see Ed and Lucinda and Nazelrod, and, they'll
help you out.
They'll give you a spot to be until I get there."
Yeah.
And so Lucinda gave me a couple of cushions and a stack of lapidary journals, and the rest is history.
How old were you guys at that point?
I was in college, so we're just out of college.
Yeah, so you were just finishing up your master's, kind of.
I was just finishing up undergrad. I just finished undergrad.
Yeah. And what did you do with that degree? Did you work as a botanist?
I did a little bit. And I wrote a little book about the plants of the Mono Basin in the Eastern Sierra. And, it kind of, when I finished my thesis, we started the business. So the botany kind of is there, but I never did a lot of professional work with it.
Mm-hmm. Because something got in the way. Him?
Yeah.
Richard got in the way.
Little turquoise got in the way.
Yeah. So where did you both grow up? In the same city?
I was born in Torrance, and she was in Upland.
Yeah.
Okay, and so you guys were.
So we are
same age group in high school. All right. And so, what were you doing in high school? Tearing down trucks and cars, or
kind of.
Yeah.
The second you got a car.
Yeah, as soon as I got a driver's license, I was out in the desert because I had been in Boy Scouts and traveled a lot with my family too. I mean, my dad took me on a 100-mile backpacking trip when I was 8 around the Olympic Peninsula in Washington. Wow. So
what did he do?
He worked. He was an engineer. He worked for Hughes Aircraft. But we went on these trips, and at that age, seeing that you could be independent and put on a pack and go 100 miles through the wilderness, that opened my eyes as a little kid to exploration and just adventure. And so being interested in all that, when I was 16, we took whatever car we could get, family car we could borrow, and headed to the desert. I was probably 17 when I first went to the Candelaria Hills and didn't really know about the turquoise mining history there.
You just wanted to explore.
And I was into mining history and ghost towns and
you had been in the underground mine up there.
And when I was
gold country.
when I was like 10 too, I'd gone into an underground gold mine with a family friend. and was
That's
kind of
always
hooked
safe.
on the. Yeah, I know. And he had
That's
me in
pretty
there
exciting,
shoveling
though.
and doing stuff. But that experience too, it was just kind of the history of the West.
Did you
and
find anything when you were in that gold
we
mine?
didn't really. Not
Yeah.
that I remember.
Yeah.
In fact, he had it set up for a tour, and he had spray painted some gravel gold so
Yeah.
that the tourists could pick up gold nuggets. but
Made an impression
just kind of
on the
that
little guy.
Western history and
Right.
got me out exploring, and worked on a farm for the summer when I was 17, bought a pickup, and then just started going out and looking around. And I thought, man, can I make it as a minor? But then I got interested in other things. I was also really interested in the arts and Western native art and things like that. So
Like buying and selling stuff, or
more just interested.
Yeah.
Just exposed to it from family and appreciating
Mhm.
it, and then I started doing some silversmithing, even when pretty young. So the mining didn't come out so much as I wanted to be a miner, but I wanted to get high quality stones for my work.
For your own
for whether it
silversmith.
was my gem carving or metalsmithing, and then
Uh-huh.
I got more into the cutting because doing everything was just too overwhelming, and other people wanted to buy my stones that I was cutting. So
And were you working with like a trading post kind of thing, or somebody, with Native Americans to cut stones? What was that?
not at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just I was doing the gem carving and other cutting,
Right.
and all kinds of smiths were interested. So
Yeah.
whether they were native or Anglo.
Yeah. And where was this that you were doing all this?
Well, I'd been Southern California area, and then when she went back to school after we got back together,
Yeah, but
I had
Northern
a studio
California.
up in Northern California,
Mhm.
and then we'd commute to the mines. So
In Nevada.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and we mined some other gem materials, opal and different quartz gems and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But really, turquoise was the thing from when I was a little kid. I mean, just traveling, going to trading posts with my family,
Right.
and being exposed in the 70s, especially when it was everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I got hooked then, and that just
Yeah.
kind of
Well, and then your time in Baker with Ed.
and that's really where
that
I did
was
my first mining was
really-
with Ed Naselrod in the California mines, which most people aren't really even aware of.
I'm not.
And there's some very old mines there, so that people
Turquoise
consider,
mines.
and
Turquoise.
some
Mhm.
consider those to be a Tiffany mine, but it was actually Julius Tannenbaum who had operated the Himalaya Tourmaline mine and sold production to them.
Mm-hmm.
And then later, after that, he went to California, and then later Nevada in the Royston area. But they operated mines there, and they produced very high quality gem grade
Mm-hmm.
turquoise, but scattered.
Top blue.
And so when I met the Naselrod family, they're running small mines, and I kind of connected with them.
And running a small mine means you might have one or two employees tops.
It was even just family and a couple friends
Yeah.
with them,
And you'd go and
I would go out
dig
and dig with them, and that's where I learned
how to do it.
well a few things.
Yeah.
Respecting the stone.
Yeah.
Ed was a complete purist. He wouldn't even back a stone because that was a chemical contact with the stone.
Got it.
And
Okay.
so he wouldn't even sell it to inlay artists because they were going to use glue to put the just super. I mean,
Yeah.
an extreme purist, but
He was-
I learned that side of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also his really love of the turquoise. So every little nugget was hard won, but beautiful hard material.
Yeah.
And so that just kind of opened my eyes to the pursuit.
And so when you're working with them, how do you make money or live? Do you get part of the
I'd get
take?
I'd get a little bit of the take.
Yeah, and then you could take
And I was
that
at that time I had other jobs, and
Right.
I'd go out on the weekend, and then I ended up going on a multi-month road trip with a friend, checking out Western gem deposits, and came back from that, and I decided to go to GIA and get my gemologist diploma. So
Mhm.
I did that, and on weekends, since it was when they were in Santa Monica, weekends I'd be out there with Ed digging.
Mm.
So that really
And bringing turquoise into
Yeah, and
GIA.
I'd bring
that was
in-
nicer than
it was better than
all their
some of it was
Persian.
better than the Persian they were showing the students.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, just a pure high blue. And one of the instructors, Gary Roskin, I brought this stuff in, and some of the other students were like, wait a minute, what's this? Come on, Persian's the best, right? How can this be bluer than the samples of Persian you're showing us?
Right.
And he said, you're going to learn things at GIA that are a baseline. But when you get out into the real world of gemstones, you're going to learn that there's exceptions to everything.
Yeah, of course. And everything.
And that kind of opened up too, that I could find world-class gem material out there, even with a pick and shovel. And that's not the way to make a living with it, because one guy with a pick and shovel would have a hard time finding enough to feed a family, maybe himself. And
how do you do that where you can feed a family? Is that being able to cut the stone and that type of thing?
It's a combination of those things. Also finding deposits that produce enough. I mean, and people always, the dream is to go out there just with a pick and get rich. And that's not likely to happen. It's going to be a team of people.
Right.
It's going to be a certain level of equipment work, usually for moving rock that doesn't have the turquoise, and being careful. I mean, equipment can also be a big problem, because you get a giant excavator and you can go in there and hit that one pocket, like that one pocket of black web gem could have been scooped out and thrown off, and you'd never find it again. And you say there's nothing here. So there's a balance between your eyes on the ground and having to move enough earth to get to where that next pocket is. And also having a few people working, because turquoise doesn't have a mechanical way to separate the turquoise from the rock. So gold mining, they can use gravity separation. And when it comes to turquoise, every piece is picked up and put into your bag or your bucket. So that's once again where one guy just sitting there going like this, you could spend all day just trying to pick those nuggets out. So having good eyes on the ground really helps.
And so you at some point break away and say, okay, I'm gonna go find turquoise.
Well, after we were successful on some claims.
And when was that first claim? How old were you both when you did it? Because this was a joint venture, right?
Yeah, that was let's see,
we were in our late 20s.
Yeah, mid 90s. So it's been about
early
years.
90s.
Yeah.
Okay, and you were all in on this?
Yeah, pretty much. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I did it part-time while I was doing my school work, and then when I finished, we just jumped in with both feet and kept going.
Richard said, okay, this is your dream. Or was it the other way around? I don't know.
Well, it's just all a dream. So.
Yeah, it seems like you're both really definitely cohesive on this. This is our dream. Yeah, which is nice. That's really nice when you have that. Who can find the turquoise better on surface finds?
We both do great.
It goes back and forth.
Yeah.
I mean, really, with this Double Eagle, the new mine we found, that was a teamwork thing too. But
and was that this stone here?
Yeah.
That's
stone.
So that people are watching this on
and these nugget or these cabs.
Maybe watching on this video on YouTube. You can see this beautiful nugget. Double Eagle, and these are all Double Eagle cabs too. So it's got this kind of greenish blue look to it, and I wouldn't know what that is. Now I do, which is interesting to see. And so, when you found that was your first find?
No, that was one of our most recent.
That's one of your most recent.
And for an example, though, she's found things.
What's that? That's a purple stuff underneath it.
That's just a quartzy chert.
Okay. This makes great for people just listening to it. What's that? Well, it's kind of this chert. It almost looks purpley color quartz. I see it's a quartz thing. Okay. Cool. Anyway, matrix. Double Eagle.
So on this one, backstory is on some deposits, Helen's been hiking or looking around, and we'll spread out and be examining the ground, and if we think something's in the area, we'll work a grid work and try to look at every square inch of the ground. And if we find even a chip, that's an indicator that something could be deeper in the ground. And often there'll be almost nothing on the surface, and it could be an amazing deposit deeper. In the case of this Double Eagle, we'd had a really wet year this year, and we couldn't work some of our other deposits. Either we couldn't get to them, the roads washed out, and it was one of those years, or mud.
But that could be a good thing, obviously, right?
It can wash down the ground, but a lot of the access roads were damaged, and some of those are county maintained, so they hadn't gotten to those roads. So I see this mountain with a steep face on it, and I go, well, somebody probably hasn't looked around up there on this steep mountain. So I hiked up the mountain.
Right.
And I get to this place with really loose rock, and I'm slipping and sliding around. I go, I can just get up to this one area. And I look down, and there's a rock about this big with a dark blue turquoise going through it. And I thought, wow, that's on the surface.
What's that
What
doing
else?
here?
What else? And I rolled over another rock just to see what was there, and there was nuggets stuck on that.
Oh, wow.
And I was finishing up another mining project that had to be there. I told Helen to go out to this spot and start looking, because in between these boulders, if there's nuggets, they're going to fall down between the boulders. So she went out, and after about 10 minutes, she started finding nuggets that you couldn't see from the surface. So there was one piece, one flipped over.
Right.
And then she started finding nuggets. And as we worked our way up the hill,
So I literally swam my way through the scree,
through
trying
several
to
feet
find
of
the nuggets,
deep
and
rock, or loose rock, and
find where they were coming from. And
Right. And you can find kind of where the mother lode is, where the origin is, because they're breaking off and going down into.
right.
And you found that?
well, our partner Philip Chambliss always says, "Well, the turquoise didn't roll uphill."
Yeah.
So
True.
I just kept looking, and until it stopped, and
Yeah.
then we dug in, and there was an incredible pocket.
Yeah. So at that moment, you guys take photos, you put a claim,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Exactly.
at that moment, right?
Yeah.
Right. And then somebody hightails it to get the claim listed, right?
Get it filed.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Can they do that electronically?
No.
Yeah. Sounds
It's all.
It sounds like that. It should be.
I mean,
Clearly.
you
It's
mail
still a
it
little
in, but
old-fashioned.
some of the claims, some of our earliest turquoise claims, we go the next day and file it,
I would
and
think.
just make the drive.
Yeah.
And when we first moved to Dyer, Nevada, there were so limited resources, no self-service, no copying machine anywhere. So
Right.
you need to make copies of maps for the different agencies.
Right.
So here I'm hand drawing each map
3 times.
and doing it old
Right.
style, just like, okay, draw this map again, and it has to be a
Right.
technical map, and get that done, and then get to the county or the BLM office
Mm-hmm.
and make sure that it's
Listed.
legal. Yeah.
And that nobody else has already done that.
Right. And that's one thing too with the prospecting. It's really important to do the research
Yeah.
and find out if somebody else has a claim there.
Before you even begin.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. And it can be tricky because the law says that someone has to make a map to the best of their ability, because when the mining law started, 1872 mining law, it was really getting individuals to go out and find resources. And they knew that these people might be good at finding the minerals, but they're not surveyors. They're
Right.
not
Mm-hmm.
technical people. But you want the map to be good enough that when someone examined the ground, they could find where these claim posts are. And so some maps might have stuff a mile away from where it really is. So you end up having to really
Be very careful.
examine the
Yeah.
ground
Mhm.
and look for those markers, which
Yeah.
we think posts, but it can be a pile of rocks. It can be a
Mhm.
number of things that are
Correct.
illegal.
Mhm.
And so you really have to do your diligence ahead of time to make sure you're not stepping on someone else's toes.
Can you go back in historical records and look for old mines that have lapsed in ownership? And
Definitely.
just to me, that would be the way.
And that's how a lot of turquoise mines have been rediscovered
I
or
would think.
reopened. And that's part of the research, like Helen was talking
Mhm.
about. It's geological research and historical research.
Mhm.
Uh,
What about Google Maps? I know for archaeology, I know people that use them to go find petroglyphs and stuff. They'll literally do Google Maps, satellite, and just sit there and go and look for the different areas and
And
find them through
that is helpful.
Mhm. Yeah.
For one, looking for the type of geology, because the ground colors are different,
Yes.
and also looking for old excavations. So if you know a historic mine might be in a certain area,
Mm-hmm.
at least in the desert country,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
you can see things.
Right.
You get into areas with more vegetation, obviously.
Right.
Stuff can be overgrown, and
And I would think a lot of those historic mines are really going for gold and silver and stuff. Not
Generally.
not
Most
turquoise.
of
Generally.
Right?
Yeah.
Most people didn't really go for turquoise, did
Yeah.
not
they? I mean,
except for certain families, certain
Yeah.
areas.
Mhm.
like Gobner and those guys did.
Yeah.
And so, has anybody done any tourist type adventures? I could see that being a business where people would pay just to go out and do this.
There are a few people.
Some of the miners do that. Yeah.
Some of the miners do
I can
that,
see it.
like in the Royston area.
Yeah.
And people pay a certain amount a day to go out and
Yeah,
look through the dumps.
yeah,
We've done a couple of those, like for a certain club or something.
yeah.
But generally, we don't, and for a number of reasons. I mean, for our own security at the mines, and a lot of it are smaller deposits. It's so hard won.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
You
I'm
know,
sure. It's like,
And the amount of time it takes. We do a lot of the cutting. So
yeah, it sounds like you do most of the cutting as a general rule.
And the processing and everything else. So our time is.
And you cut for other people as well, I assume?
We do.
On
I mean, we
occasion?
cut for the trade. So
Yeah.
and we work with a lot of individual artists. So now we sell stones. We also trade for jewelry a lot of times, and then sell the jewelry.
Mm.
So if an artist,
So an artist would come, contemporary native artist,
right,
and he says, "We'll do a trade. I'll give you this," and that way they don't have to pay for the.
right, and it gets
Stones.
them into higher grade stone.
And then you sell the jewelry retail through your website, or
Usually through word of mouth. People
Okay.
know that I have decent jewelry and
keep me in
represent
mind.
certain artists.
Keep me in mind. Put me on your list.
Right.
I mean,
And I like doing that because I like to support the artist. I mean,
well, and you work with some of the best artists too.
exactly.
I mean, you have
That's-
high grade turquoise that we know what it is, and right from again, I want to emphasize the best way is if it's coming right from the person who pulled it out of the mine.
Absolutely.
There is no doubt what you're buying or what you're getting when it's like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you've been doing this for how long now? A long time, right?
Over 30 years.
30 years.
Yeah.
Wow. What's been the hardest part of doing this job? It is a job. I mean,
Yes,
a
it is.
profession, but it's a job. What's the hardest part of it?
Probably balancing getting all the work that needs to be done accomplished, the physical work, and getting the bills paid at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Because just the timing,
Sales opportunities don't always happen
the amount of time it
when
takes
bills do. So
from mind to finished piece, and
the physical nature. I mean, it is just it's hard work. A lot of people think it sounds like a whole lot of fun to go out and find turquoise, and it's exciting.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we have a saying amongst our group. It's people go, "Oh, that's so fun," and it's like, well, it's rewarding. And,
I get it.
And you know, it's enjoyable and it's exciting, and I wouldn't want to do anything else, but it is really extremely hard work. It's hard rock mining. And
Yeah. I would think.
so there's that side of it. And Helen says the timing. And then we try to respect the stone. So I'm not going to sell material like I need to pay a bill, go sell it super cheap when I've worked that hard for it and then be set back. I'd rather find a way to get those bills paid,
Right.
and
Take
respect
time.
the stone, because the stone should still go to a good artist or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and not just be turned into money as quickly as possible
Right.
for a short-sighted reason,
not
basically.
yeah.
So
And do you have people that work for you too to help excavate all these?
we work
claims?
with a few friends and partners. That's why when we mentioned the 40-some claims, we own some of those outright ourselves. Some are with partners.
Yeah.
And that way we get a team together, because it's hard to do.
Yeah. It doesn't seem
do it
possible.
individually, but even as a couple.
Plus, you're getting older.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh.
but especially if you're using a pickaxe and
I
and
know.
a shovel.
Yeah,
Mhm. Yeah.
That's back-breaking work.
it is.
Yes. I think that's where the balance comes in, trying to balance that physical work with everything else. And
I would think so.
yeah,
How many active people like you are there out there that are doing these mines?
There could be a couple dozen, probably. I mean, really, out there day to day, it's probably a dozen.
Yeah.
Outside of like a large operation like Kingman or something,
Mm-hmm.
but like with the Nevada mines, there might be a dozen people. So
And it seems like a lot of them are in the Nevada area that are doing it. It's just because it's the Old West and there's lots of...
it's a number of reasons.
potential. Yeah,
For
what are
one,
they?
Nevada has more turquoise individual mines
Yes.
than anywhere else in the Southwest.
Yes.
And so, I mean, at one point, someone was saying there's something like 400 to 500 individual little mines. Some are played out and gone. Some have been gobbled up by gold mines. But there are opportunities on a small scale for a family to find those mines. So a lot of it is in Nevada just because that's where the turquoise is. And like our partner, Philip, he was mining in the Cerritos Hills, and the difficulties, and state to state varies on mining laws. So even though turquoise is a big historic thing in New Mexico,
Right.
hard rock mining isn't really allowed to a certain scale in the county where Cerritos is. So there are people doing it, but it's even smaller scale, and you have way more hurdles where Nevada, because it's kind of known as a mining state, since it's
Right. It is.
one of the largest gold and silver producers in the country. So
Right.
there's the laws, or I guess the attitudes there are a little more open to mining.
Right.
So you have that combination of it being part of the culture as well as deposits are there.
Mhm.
So that's where we're doing it.
Somebody should document all these miners that are doing this, just like I'm doing with all my different artists and dealers and stuff. It would be very interesting.
Actually, several of the miners, many of them are documented in the Turquoise history book
The Turquoise
series.
in America books.
Yeah, Turquoise in America. Philip Chambliss wrote the first one that is the early history, but then and then all the classic mines in the second book, and then some of us who are working now are in the third. So,
and the one book document a lot of the families with the important finds in the entire country, but really a lot of it focuses on Nevada.
Yeah,
and follows that path of
it's a
these whole
fascinating
families
history,
of,
really.
Yeah. So I see something for you. I'll throw it out there for you, but isn't this a made-for-TV reality show, honestly?
Well, there has
it's been
one.
Has it? I mean, it seems like it.
and we've been in it.
Yeah.
we were.
It was
in
mainly
a couple
was
episodes.
focusing on the Ottoson family.
Yeah.
And then we were in 2 of the episodes of a 6-episode series.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like it's just like the perfect thing for it.
Yeah, it was.
I
a lot
would
of
find.
fun.
I mean, the way you describe finding this is Double Eagles.
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
I mean,
Yeah.
capturing that moment when you found it. I mean, you know, a lot of filming before you find anything like that.
Right.
But my goodness gracious, that's, you know.
Yeah, it is.
I'll just throw it out there again for anybody, any producer people that are looking for reality TV. I'll be happy to be a producer on this one.
That's great.
Just don't give me a shovel and a pick. I wouldn't be very helpful with that at all.
Oh, we can always use more mucker.
But it does sound like that. I mean, it's just so interesting. It's the Wild West in a weird way. You know?
It is, and that's being being into the history of the West and following that, and to be able to be out in some of these places. We'll be on the side of this mountain, and I've seen the historic photographs from over 100 years before that,
right?
And everything's identical. There's nobody else there, and we're the only ones there. It's us and the hill.
And we're only digging a small hole.
And
very small.
Yeah,
we're not talking about something large.
So it could be any time period, and that's what I enjoy about that too. Is cell phone
slows down
range.
Time a little.
There's no tie to technology other than the fact that we didn't take a buckboard in there. We drove in a pickup, or
your 2 legs,
or hiked. And so,
or I guess you could use a horse. Have you done that before?
We haven't.
Yeah, no, for the TV program.
Well, it is in the one.
There you go. I mean, it makes sense. They're a good form of transportation.
Yeah. And we've thought about that as, getting some burros or mules and doing that. But so far, we've figured out other
Just
ways.
hasn't been practical.
Yeah, I mean, it has all those components. Plus, you have to use the science. You're a gemologist, and you're both scientists, really, basically.
Yeah.
And you have to understand the geology, the land, all that stuff.
That's what keeps it interesting, too.
Yeah.
Is the combination of things. And even seasonal, you're working with the seasons.
Yeah.
In the middle of summer can be way too hot. Middle of winter can be below 0.
Yeah.
So you need to find those windows.
This is probably prime time. So we're shooting this in November. I would think this is like
it's already been getting pretty cold. I mean, it's still
in the teens. So
daytimes are workable, but one thing too is the low angle of the light makes it really hard to see, and you don't
pick out the flakes of blue and things.
The colors don't come up as much. You got that lower angle, more yellow light.
Is there any way to do it with like a UV light where you
could probably set up? There's some guys who in the summer like to mine at night and set up lights, and
I would think you might.
And
work that
we've
way.
tried that. And usually in the summer we get up 3 in the morning, so we're out there before sunrise. And
are you camping out in a camper, or are you tenting it? Or
some we're back and forth since we live in the middle of kind of turquoise country.
Yes.
Some of we're just out day to day. Then other times we set up a camp and the Northern Lights mine up in Carrico Lake Valley, near where the Carrico Lake mine is. We'll go up there and set up for 3 weeks, and maybe one person will go into town once to get materials. We'll have an ice maker, and everything's generator fuel. And there's the logistics. So that's another
logistics.
you talk about the science. There's so many little details But what I was going to say about working with the seasons too is the nice thing is with the physical labor, we can take a break. Mm-hmm. And so middle of summer, middle of winter, we're in the studio cutting stones.
I'm going to say that's the other component. You have the art component.
Exactly.
Yes. Right? I mean, because you're doing that part of it as well.
Mm-hmm. And so that mix, it never gets boring or it doesn't, with the physical labor, we know there's going to be a break. So it's not that we just have to keep shoveling and picking.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so then we can go focus on the art, which is a change of mental space.
I'm sure.
And that's really what keeps it interesting too, because...
And then you can start actually getting money out of what you've done.
Exactly.
Right.
And so we were talking about the
Yeah.
difficulty of when the money comes in,
Yeah.
is things do revolve around shows or sales trips, so like the Tucson Gem Show
And so you'll sell there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So go ahead and hype that while you're here. Where do you show when you're here?
We do one show now in Tucson during the Tucson show, which is the AGTA wholesale show.
Say it again slowly.
AGTA.
And at the convention center.
That's the
center.
one at the convention center.
And it's not the public club show. It's the wholesale show that happens the week before that.
Uh-huh. And you prefer to wholesale?
We do. We also sell directly to people. The other show we do is during Indian Market in Santa Fe.
And you do that at the
El Dorado Hotel. And there's a room there that's mostly turquoise miners.
Yeah.
And so anybody can come in there.
I'm coming in next year. I'm going to go film it, actually.
Cool.
Great.
Yeah, I definitely will. Because we do Indian Market every year, and we go do different filmings of artists and stuff. But and I go in there to look at the stuff, which is always interesting. Yeah.
And one thing with AGTA, with that wholesale show, is there's a code of ethics with AGTA about full disclosure on gem treatments and everything around the gems. And so when we have an invoice, our invoice has codes for anything that, whether the stone's been backed, whether it's had what people call top filling, where there's a pit in the top of the stone, and we need to mix a little bit of ground up stone and resin and fill that hole, because some people like the texture, some people want a smooth surface. It depends on what jewelry it's going into. So we tell people exactly what all those things are. And so that's why we like to do that show and be members of that trade organization, because all the members disclose everything. And so the buyers know exactly what they're getting. And often with the treatments of turquoise stabilized or other things, there are some people out there that don't tell anybody what it is.
Yeah, talk to me a little bit about like reconstituted turquoise and stabilized turquoise and the things that people need to understand and be aware of.
Well, there's reconstituted or also block turquoise, where people have taken soft material, they use a hydraulic press and resin,
crush it,
and
turquoise crushed up, just the bits of pieces,
and they'll mold a piece.
And then they put that with resin, and they make a block of this.
Exactly, and then it can be sliced up, and some of it looks pretty good. And
they can even color it as well, right? To bring out matrix and things like that.
And that's what they call color shot when they'll add color.
Right.
And so, of course, you know what stabilization is, but for everybody else, it's a polymer treatment where some under a vacuum pressure to pull it into the stone. The best treatments don't require that. They require the turquoise to be really dry. So it'll be a turquoise that won't polish on its own, a little bit softer or lighter color, and it'll be dried in a kiln for weeks to get all the moisture out of it. And then when they put that resin, it'll suck into the stone and hopefully, if it's done right, penetrate all the way through the stone. Right. And that just takes turquoise that a lot of that will come out of the ground. It looks beautiful. And after a week, it dries out. And almost all turquoise, good natural turquoise, will change a little bit coming out of the ground. But that material, it doesn't quite meet the standard for polishing, will need to be stabilized.
And is it because it's too dry and it just won't and crumbly?
A lot of it is it's even though it's not in the technical chemical formula for turquoise, a lot of it has silica in it, which is a quartz or even an opal.
Right.
That makes it harder. And so really translucent turquoise will have a silica content. And that helps make it harder. But people also call it chalk because some of the soft turquoise, you could literally write on a chalkboard with it.
Right.
And
that needs to be stabilized.
And some people say, well, to stabilize turquoise, that's just junk. And it's not really junk. It's still came from the
Pretty
ground,
nice.
Right.
and
Right.
there wouldn't even be a turquoise jewelry industry without stabilized turquoise because the price of natural is prohibitive to a lot of people. People want to wear some they want to wear that color. They want to have a nice piece.
And the availability of natural to be able to have enough pieces that are all the same size or shape, so someone can do a certain design, is very difficult with a lot of naturals. So.
Well, and bead cutters, especially
and beads.
Santo Domingo bead cutters,
right,
will often work with stabilized because there's a lot less breakage, and it's so heartbreaking to take natural turquoise and you've already ground all this material down to a bead and then it breaks.
Right.
You can't make a living, and you've potentially ruined something that should have been
really
used
good,
a different way.
Yeah.
And so it's just it provides more turquoise for people who want to enjoy it. And and the other side of that too is that there's some natural turquoise that will either fade or turn green over time as it absorbs skin oils, or people wear
which
perfumes.
we actually like, actually.
And it gets its patina exactly.
Often,
and that
it's wonderful.
But then if you're a New York jeweler who's selling this piece of turquoise with diamonds all around it and it turns green,
right,
that client may not like that. For those of us who appreciate vintage, historic native pieces, that patina is great. But to that person who wants their engagement ring to stay blue. And so I see a lot of high-end jewelry that actually uses stabilized because they can guarantee it won't change color. So
interesting.
there is a side of the market that thinks that's the stuff that's the best stuff.
And what's the easiest way for the novice out there to go, okay, this is stabilized, or block for that matter?
Block, you can usually tell because of the angular nature of pieces in it. The matrix won't look like a real stone matrix. Right. And so that's fairly obvious, although there's some pretty good ones out there. And there's also a material called gibbsite that looks like high-grade spiderweb turquoise, and it's fooled even a lot of experts. But generally, stabilized turquoise and there's exceptions to this, but a lot of it won't look natural. It's a weird color to it or a slight translucency that you won't see. And there's also, doesn't always work because of some of the modern treatments, but the hot pin test on the back of a stone, which as a gemologist, people say destructive test. No, but heating up a pan and touching it and you smell a little plastic.
Right.
That's one way. But it's still, it can be difficult. There's a lot of material that can look just like natural turquoise. So,
and there's people who have looked at so much turquoise, they just are like, well, I can look at that and I can tell it. There's just something about it, but that requires a trained eye.
Sometimes with like nugget beads, if you look with a loop or a magnifying glass, you can see a little bit of that resin down in if there's a crevice or a hole, and you see a little bit of yellowed resin or clear resin.
Right.
But then interestingly with Nevada blue turquoise, there is opal associated with it.
Yes.
And there are natural clear areas
and whites
and white in the turquoise
translucent.
That looks like it could be plastic, and it's not. It's clear opal. So
and then you have things like howlite, right? That they dye to look like
howlite and magnesite.
Right.
There's a lot of magnesite on the market too that has been crackled and re-glued together. So they do something, heat it, and then they cool it so it shatters, and then they fill it with something else so it looks like matrix lines. But you can usually tell that because they're jagged lines that don't look like a natural matrix. So and then of course howlite, which will often look tidy wall blue, and it's
I mean, it does look like turquoise sometimes. It can. I mean, once you see it, you can figure it out.
Right. But it does come out in nuggets that are similar
Those bubbly
to turquoise nuggets.
Right.
So it's tricky.
But it's also a lot softer too. So
yes, it is softer.
There we go. All the pitfalls of turquoise. But that's why you buy from people who know what they're doing.
Exactly. And that's where it's important for people who haven't had the experience and haven't seen a lot of turquoise to go to a reputable dealer and talk to somebody who knows what they're doing. And if you're going to invest in turquoise,
right, especially if you're going to invest in just turquoise,
right,
and not. I'm sure there's a lot of people that do that too, right? They're just buying nuggets and or cabs and that kind of thing.
Oh yeah,
They're-
there's
yep.
definitely collectors who
Yeah.
don't even put it in jewelry, and
Mhm.
Yeah, I've gotten a lot of lander over the years from people that bought it in the 70s as an investment.
Mhm.
You know, it was cabbed out and everything, but
Right.
nice. And they just said, yeah, this is going to be valuable. And they were right.
They
In that
were.
case, they were very right.
I don't
Yeah.
think that when that came out, it was the high end was $2.50 a carat, and now it can be $400 a
Oh,
carat.
yeah.
So
For sure.
Yes.
Uh-huh. Well,
It's
that's
so beautiful.
and that's where investing in the stone and the
Yes.
and the jewelry it's made from is.
Yeah.
I've never seen stuff really go down. There might be periods where it slumps, like in the 80s with turquoise, but
yeah.
since then, it's only getting more scarce.
Yeah.
So, and that's something too with natural turquoise. Even talking about that black web gem being $100 a carat wholesale, so it might be a couple $100 a carat, $300 in a retail piece. But even that, it's so rare. I mean, what else is there? Only 2.5 pounds
Mhm.
of that's out there, and is
Of that
still
quality.
that affordable. It's
Right.
if that were, some other gemstone, there's only 2.5 pounds, it'd be $1 million a carat.
Yeah.
$400 a carat is still
Right.
undervalued, really. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what a lot of people don't understand. Like, oh my God, it's so expensive, but it's
That's
one
where
of
you
the
have
most
to have
rare
the
things.
marketing and, to be able
Want
to,
people to understand.
to get it figured out. Like
Right.
this is the rarest of the rare.
Exactly.
Then they find a big pit like 10 miles down the road and there's thousands of pounds. Well,
Well,
I
Yeah, or
We're
like
still
in the
looking.
late 80s when the Chinese turquoise hit the market.
Yeah.
And
it's
beautiful material
really nice.
that was suddenly everywhere. And
yeah, it is beautiful material.
Hmm.
Yeah. But because of it not being, because of what it's associated with, I guess it just,
That's
yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Which is interesting. But it makes sense. It all makes sense.
Hmm.
And so how can people find you and if they want to buy turquoise from you guys?
We have our website, EsmeraldaTurquoiseCompany.com. And we're on Instagram as Esmeralda Turquoise.
Okay.
So those are probably the easiest.
Okay. And they can go
Places.
either way. And they
And
can,
then Indian Market in Santa Fe.
right. And they can, and so people who just want to buy retail, who want to buy something for a collection or whatever, they can do it.
Mhm.
And then jewelers also can go to you
Mhm.
as well. I know.
Exactly.
You listening, Bojo, out there? Quick, you better get to them. You got some nice stuff. This Golden Eagle stuff looks pretty nice. It look good in your material. Anything else? Oh, I had a question. What's your favorite turquoise? Do you have a favorite? Tough question for a minor.
Yes, there are a lot of favorites. A personal
Yeah.
favorite is the Dire Blue. I have this perfectly clear blue
And that's
stone
one of the ones. We had a little
with
piece here.
me.
There.
These guys.
And this is one of yours, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And so this is, what's it called?
Dire Blue.
Dire blue. And it's
named
just the
after our
bluest
hometown.
of the blue that you'll ever see. I mean, it just looks like perfect. Like,
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
yeah, it's unbelievable.
But it also produces some incredible web and pattern, and we haven't even cut much of that yet, but the patterns are unique,
Mhm.
and it's our hometown. We can see that mine from where we live, so
And you
it's
found
just
this
kind
mine?
of special to us.
It was an existing mine
Mhm.
that had been worked sporadically, and it was one of those ones we were talking about. Just find a little chip,
Right.
and our neighbors and the ranchers around are like, "Oh yeah, we know about that mine. There's
little
nothing
chips.
really there."
There's nothing there.
And they weren't turquoise miners or didn't have the experience.
Right.
And so we went in and we saw a little bit, so we put a
Found
claim
a
on
little
it.
chip.
And then I started working a spot, and I ended up finding larger nuggets
Yeah.
and dug a little tunnel. And that's when we renamed it Dire Blue, because it had been known as the Lovely Mine,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody had ever heard of it. And so we decided to rename it just for the town.
Right.
Yeah,
there.
give the town a little.
So
something.
we've done way more work than had been done
Mm.
there before. It was kind of a hobby project, and there was an old guy who had a trailer. It was basically a spot for him to live, and he had a mining claim so he could be there. And he had an old cable drive shovel
Mm-hmm.
that didn't really work for mining because it scoops like this.
Right. Up instead of down.
And it was an old machine that had sat there for years in the pit. And it was funny because he always told people, "Oh yeah, the best stuff, I kept it buried. It's under the machine," which it wasn't. We found out after we moved the machine and
Yeah.
and tried to find it. But that one does have
That's
a
just a
special
close to the
place.
heart. But
Yeah,
I think you
But
have
my-
a different favorite.
my favorite's whichever one I'm working at the time, and I get
Yeah.
caught up in
There's
it,
that.
and it's like it's kind of funny because I'll find a little bit, and I just can get so focused and lost in working that spot and amazed. I get so amazed by seeing it come out of the ground still
I'm sure.
after years.
Yeah, of course.
It's just that everything came together, and here it is coming out.
Right.
And there's another mine I was working last week that was producing huge amounts, and here I'm thrilled finding these little tiny
Right.
nuggets.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I love all the varieties. I mean, to me, green, blue, spiderweb, clear. It's exciting to see that each one has a personality,
Right.
and just like people,
Right.
and that's why I just see where turquoise can be for everyone, because I've seen people who say I hate turquoise, and then they
I've
see a
never-
stone.
I love that.
I've
And then, but they say,
never heard that.
but I love this, and it's
Yeah.
because of the variety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we've taken people who think their perception of turquoise
Mhm.
Yeah.
is one thing, and they didn't like it because grandma had too much turquoise jewelry in the 70s or whatever it
Right.
was, and silly reasons. And then
Right.
they see the stone, they fall in love with it. So that's why I just like that variety. And
Turquoise is complex.
Well, that's one of the things too. Even in a single mine, you're going to have a whole variety of looking stones, right? People don't
Yes.
realize you can, like number 8 can be just perfectly blue, and then you can have beautiful matrix as well. I mean,
Exactly.
There's a complete, and I'm sure in all your mines, there's a
some
The
are
whole spectrum.
have stuff that's all pretty similar. I mean, there's exceptions to that, but like dire blue, it's almost all gem
blue.
with some
There's
web.
Well, how do you
This one-
define gem? A gem.
That would be like
It has to do with hardness.
It has
right?
to do with hardness,
hard.
and to me, it
Good
has to
color.
have some life to it too, or what people call zat.
Mhm.
And you can't define that term. It just it's
Spark.
there's something
Charisma.
about it when
It's
you
that
put 20
thing,
pieces
yeah.
out and that
Yeah.
one stands out. But it has to do with the hardness and slight translucency,
Yes.
and has a glow to it.
Mhm.
And a lot of turquoise people throw that term around pretty
Right. I've heard it.
loosely. I mean, they call any natural turquoise that takes a polished gem grade. But when you see a lot of turquoise, it really is that finest blue, slightly translucent,
Mm-hmm.
that just glows.
Mm-hmm. But it could also be with one with matrix, couldn't they?
It could. Oh yeah, definitely.
You can
But
have a
where
gemstone,
I guess I'm
super
saying,
tight matrix.
oh
right?
yeah, and but the turquoise itself that's in that matrix,
Yeah.
The blue part.
is exceptional.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because you see it sometimes, you go, wow.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah.
That's just it. It's just-
When it blows your mind, it has that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I was going to mention that's special about turquoise, I was saying like people's personality and turquoise having different personalities,
Right.
is that the way that turquoise forms, requiring oxygen and water,
Mm-hmm.
it can only be on a planet that has life. So instead of other geology, it's
The
raining
ingredients for
diamonds on the
life.
moon and off of Jupiter or Neptune or something, that diamonds are everywhere in space, but only on a planet that has life are you going to find turquoise.
Because you have to have the water
Exactly.
to get the
Water.
And
oxygen.
oxygen. Yeah.
Mhm.
Oxygen.
And so
Mhm.
that's one reason I think it's so special to humans, is
Yeah.
that it only occurs where in a place that sustains us as well. So there's a lot to that.
Very
that-
special.
Yeah, that's great. Any other things you want to mention before we call it a day?
Boy, that's the hardest question of them all.
Yeah, we've covered a lot.
Yeah, no. Well, it's very interesting. I really appreciate you guys coming on and taking the time, because I know this was not in your plan. Your plan was to come down and look at turquoise with, I guess, from Sam, maybe, right? Sam,
Yeah.
Patania. And he sent you over here, and it was a delight because I learned a ton about turquoise. And, that's, I deal in turquoise and jewelry constantly, but there's so much to understand,
There is.
Mhm.
and I've been trying to learn it for probably close to 30 years, and I'm still learning every day. So I
That's
think,
one of the other amazing things about turquoise. And
Yeah.
as our partner Philip always says, as soon as you think you have it all figured out, it'll
Yeah.
prove you wrong.
yeah, it's true.
And that's why it's a lifetime pursuit
Yeah.
for a lot of people.
And that's
because
coming
there's
from a
always
turquoise
something
miner
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly.
who lives, breathes, and eats and supports through turquoise.
Mhm.
So, give yourself a break out there, folks, if you don't know what it is.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's-
exactly.
And the dealer who says, "Oh, I know exactly what that is," okay, take it with a grain of salt. Maybe
Yeah.
they do,
Yeah,
if it's Bisbee or something, or they specialize in it. But also, if they always know what it is,
right.
Yeah,
wow.
I'd wonder a little bit.
It's
Yeah.
like a doctor who never, they always know the answer.
Right.
Because I always used to tell people, I don't know. I go, well, what I can tell you is what it isn't.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you can do that and not know what it is. I don't know what it is, but I can at least tell you it's not this.
Right.
And I think you can kind of probably do the same with turquoise. Well, it isn't Chinese, but I'm not sure what it is, that kind of thing.
Right.
Or it's natural, but I don't know exactly what.
Looks like it could be Nevada,
Yeah.
but
yeah.
That's
right. I'm sure you guys have gotten pretty good, though, at being able to identify stuff.
To a degree. I mean, it can be a guessing game, but there are characteristics that at least get you to a region, too.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about the pyrite in turquoise.
Yeah.
That generally that's material from Arizona or Mexico. And there's the old blue gem mine near Battle Mountain, Nevada did have pyrite. But it's the exception in Nevada.
Yes.
So you see pyrite in there and you're going to know it's Sonoran or it's from Kingman or Morenci or something like that.
I look for it. That's something I always look for. Okay, it's got pyrite.
Yeah.
Probably Morenci or whatever. It could be Kingman, whatever.
Yeah.
There you go.
There are clues.
Well, thank you very much. And I'll see you probably maybe at the Gem and Mineral Show. I'll only go there. You come and see us.
Wonderful.
Sounds great. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you very much.
You.
That's great. Thanks.
All right. That was fun.